Welcome from Hollywood, California, the entertainment capital of the world. We're here on the Paramount Studios lot for Cinegear Expo 2014. This is Cinema 5D on the Couch, presented by G Technology, Rode Microphones, Vitech Videocom, Post Magazine, and Owls Media. This is your host, Nino Leitner.
Welcome to another episode of Cinema 5D on the Couch, this time for the first time in front of an audience here on the Paramount lot during Cinegear 2014. Before we get this started, before I introduce our guests, I will just mention that this session is happening thanks to G Technology, who is our main sponsor. And for the audience here, there is a G-Dock EV to be won by any of you. So please stick around till the end and we'll do the live drawing at the end and somebody will walk home with the G-Dock EV. Okay, so let's introduce our guests. Today I'm happy to welcome Alex Buono and Adam Epstein, Skyped in from New York. They're both working on the Saturday Night Live film unit, right? Hi guys.
Hello.
How are you? This is very futuristic.
It is. I mean, you see us there, but you are here. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
It feels like Adam passed away 5 years ago, but we've
I mean, everyone wants to be able to attend a funeral at some point, right?
So, how long have you guys been working together on Saturday Night Live?
Yeah, when did you start?
This was my 5th season. This last one. So compared to Alex, I just started basically.
And you are the senior editor, right?
Yeah, so at SNL, working on the film pieces, there is our group, which is the film unit, and then there's another unit called Beast Unit, which are 2 great in-house directors, Matt and Oz, and one of our good friends, Kelly Brickner, who's an amazing editor. She cuts with them. And then the Good Neighbor dudes, they're a comedy team that kind of are an island unto themselves. And Dave McCrary is their director, and he edits all their stuff.
Okay, cool. So Alex, I mean, to me as an outsider, Saturday Night Live shooting, being the DP on Saturday Night Live sounds like a dream job. I mean, you get to shoot really, really funny scenes. You get to be really creative with, all kinds of camera stuff and just visually. So how did you actually end up getting that gig, and how did it, to become what it is now?
I was very, very lucky in that when I started out and I went to film school, and when I got out of film school, I was a camera assistant for a few years. And while I was assisting, I would always try to keep shooting and just anything that anyone would let me shoot. So I was shooting, lots of short films and indie features and, crazy music videos and things. And eventually, these very low-budget independent films. And it just happened that one summer, while I was shooting this very, very low-budget movie in North Carolina, the producer of the movie happened to be a producer for Saturday Night Live. And Saturday Night Live was on the summer hiatus. They take 4 months off every summer, and everybody goes and does a movie, on their own. And so she was producing the movie, and we got to know each other and became friendly, and the movie itself was never even finished. It was just one of those low-budget movies that, kind of disappears. And yet, the best thing that came out of it was, we forged this friendship, and she invited me to, come and try shooting a commercial parody for Saturday Night Live. And it was kind of like, hey, you're cool, that was fun. You want to try shooting an SNL short film spot? And, I was 25 years old, and I honestly had no business shooting Saturday Night Live at the time. I barely understood. I thought I was a genius, and I knew everything about cinematography, and what else is there to learn? And but yeah, that was the first time I came out to New York and shot my first spot, and I've just been coming back and forth ever since.
You're still moving back and forth every week.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's the joke. I live in LA, and I fly to New York. I commute to New York for work on a weekly basis. So it's sort of a Wednesday night I fly out, and then and it also sort of speaks to the crazy schedule that we have at the show. We prep on Thursday, we shoot on Friday, we broadcast on Saturday. So it's as creative as you can be in one day.
So That's your USP, I guess, in New York. You're the guy from LA, the guy from Hollywood. Right?
That's right. That's right.
That's why they keep you on.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not because you're good. It's just that.
When I first started, the first director that I worked with at the time, who's a legendary, old school New York director, Jim Signorelli, and I told him I'd been working at the show for about 2 seasons, and I kind of figured, hey, this is great. I'm really enjoying this. I was like, Jim, you know what? I decided I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move to New York. I don't need to be in LA. I'm going to move to New York. And he looks at me and he's like, no, you can't move to New York. You're my LA guy. If you move to New York, I got to get another LA guy. And he really liked, sort of, telling people that I was, I flew in from LA to do this.
Yeah, I think of Alex as almost the reverse version of, you have the New York people that move to LA, and then when they're hungry, they get like traditional New York bagels flown in, basically. Like, we need the real deal.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I guess that's a compliment, yeah.
And you, Adam, are you born and raised in New York, or?
No.
Did you come in from LA?
I mean, originally, I went to school in LA, and then I lived there for about 5 years afterwards. And I've been in New York for about 7.5 years so far. But my background is mainly Southern California.
Okay. So Saturday Night Live is very well known for their sketches all over the world. I mean, we even know it, although we don't have it on TV. But we, every now and then we're lucky enough to see some of the clips online, although they make sure that it's hard for us to actually watch them. But how has it changed visually since you have become involved? Because so much has happened in technology since 15, 20 years ago, and it's very the style you're filming this in is very filmic. Was it always like that, or has it become easier now that the technology is everywhere and approachable?
Well. It's kind of, done a full circle where, I started in 1999, we were shooting on film stock. I mean, we were shooting 35mm film stock on that same schedule, trying to shoot on a Friday, process Friday night, still finish the spot on Saturday, which was just, it was completely insane. It was unworkable. You just had no time to do any kind of post-production. And yet we did that for years, and the shows did that for years. I mean, they did that for years and years before I ever got there. And as soon as digital camera technology started enabling a different kind of workflow where you wouldn't have to go through, post-processing, you wouldn't have to go through telecine, we immediately jumped on that boat. And so in my time at the show, it's been this, constant evolution of technology where we went from 35mm film stock to mini DV like overnight, and kind of just...
How was that at the time?
I think we were all in denial. I mean, we were just pretending like, because it was such a huge leap forward in terms of post workflow. I mean, it was so much easier to get these spots done in a day. We just were pretending like it just didn't look terrible. It looks just like film, and and then as every year there would be a new camera, we would try it, and it would get a little bit better and a little bit better, and you look where we are now, and it's funny because it's certainly night and day from like 2003 when we were all immersed in the DV revolution.
Right.
And the sort of, the bar that we're always trying to achieve is, well, we want it to look like film again. And I feel like we're just about there, where it's back to the film look that we were getting back in 1999 when I had no idea how to shoot anything. But we were shooting on film.
Yeah, it's true. I remember when we were happy to get the first camera that was actually mini DV camera that was actually able to shoot progressive.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah,
DVX 100 and the Sony.
I still have my 100A.
Yeah, same as me. I couldn't, I still have it sitting at home because I shot my first documentary with that. I just can't sell that thing.
That's why I have my HVX 200 that I will never part with. I don't want to shoot with it again, but
yeah. You don't want to shoot low light with that camera. Yeah.
No, you don't.
So the creative process in Saturday Night Live, I believe you guys have to move pretty quickly. I mean, the turnaround must be crazy. How many episodes, how many individual sketches does one show have? And how much lead time do you have to actually shoot one of those and edit one of those and put it out online and on air?
What is it about? It's about 12 sketches per show?
Yeah. It varies. Sometimes it's standard. Okay, there's going to be a monologue. There's going to be a cold open, then a monologue, then a sketch, then a commercial. So on that kind of the standard setup, it's usually like 12 or 13, I think, something like that. And then every once in a while they'll either do something like a little different, and they'll have a runner where a different version of the same idea plays once or twice. Like we'll do a film piece that has 3 parts that'll kind of come back throughout the show. But like you're saying, like around a dozen sketches, and then two musical performances.
So within that, there could be 1 film piece, there could be 2, there could be 3. Again, when I first started the show, we wouldn't even do a film piece every show. We had seasons where we might do 10 film pieces in an entire season, and now we'll do 50 film pieces in a season. 45. I don't know how many. Do you know how many we did this year? It was up there, and so.
Oh God, I don't know. Like Alex was saying, there used to be each week would be like, okay, maybe we'll get one this week, but now it's basically, I don't think we ever had an instance where we're like, I don't know, maybe take it easy this weekend. It's kind of a foregone conclusion nowadays.
I think a big part of that is you kind of have to credit, Andy Samberg and his Lonely Island crew creating this new brand, this SNL digital short, which just completely blew up during the sort of, YouTube sensation. It created this viral quality to the sketches that previously didn't exist. And he kind of came right at the exact right moment. And ever since then, the spots that we do have this other life beyond Saturday night. And so, and consequently, we keep doing more and more spots each episode. So now we're, 1, 2, maybe 3 in a single episode.
So you have a number of directors working on each episode, or how does it work? Is it one director directing all the sketches?
There's one main guy, Reese Thomas, who is the director and the producer of the overall film unit. But it's truly, it's obviously, it's not realistic for one person to direct 4 different spots in one day. There's a B unit that, as Adam was mentioning, Matt and Oz as a directing team that will handle, say if there's 1 script, more often than not, Reese will direct it. If there's a second script, that'll go to Matt and Oz. There may be a 3rd script that gets greenlit that there's a sort of a group, a comedy group called Good Neighbor, and they're now part of the show, and so they might write a piece that gets greenlit. So yeah, but in any given week, it could be that there's 3 spots, and Reese directs 1, and Matt and Oz direct another one, and then Dave from Good Neighbor does the 3rd one.
Okay, so from the moment you get one of those scripts, the crew gets one of those scripts, how fast do you move, and what's the process?
Basically, on a weekly basis, the show is obviously recreated every week. It's a sketch show. There's no recurring characters. The sketches are, for the most part, most of the writing happens Tuesday. A little bit Monday, coming into Wednesday. Wednesday, there's a table reading where all the sketches are, everyone sits around a table, all the producers and the writers and the cast members and everybody sits around, reads through all the scripts, as maybe they're reading through, a few dozen scripts. Wednesday night, they make their selections. So on Wednesday night, they say, these are the 12 we're going to do, and of those 12, these ones are going to be film spots. So I'm not in that meeting. I'm in LA, and I'll get a call from Reese, our director and our producer, who's in the meeting, and says, hey, this is our script. And he tells me about it, and then he emails me the script. And I think Adam finds out right about the same time.
I get an email from Reese, or a call from Reese or someone in production with the script, usually like Wednesday at like 6:30, 7 o'clock. So then you can sort of start, like on my end, because I know Thursday everyone is going to be in full pre-production mode. Like I'll take that time to kind of start to break down the script in my head to an extent, and okay, we're going to need this type of sound design. here's some potential titles that we're gonna be doing. So trying to get ahead of the game before the shooting really starts, if it's possible and if it lends itself to that.
So do you as an editor reach out to production and tell them what you would need from them?
No, not so much. Like Reese and I will talk, especially if it's something, where we're doing more often than not, more often than not, it's we're doing some sort of parody or just trying to nail a look or a style or a tone really specifically. So, let's say we're doing like an action trailer thing. I'll talk with Reese about, in the same way that Alex will, about, shot composition or lighting or camera moves. We'll say, okay, in this piece that we really like is a good archetype of that, the way that they have these like intense sound builds that then stop down hard, then kick back in a certain way. Or, every cut has some like sound hit under it, and everything's flutter cut and double layers of stuff. So just to kind of get my head around what the style or what we're going to be doing beforehand. But I'm not going to production saying like we need this or this would help.
So, but it's like a creative discussion basically. You're involved from the moment the script is there, not just after the shooting is done.
No, I think one of the best things about like our group having worked together on so many things now is everyone is bringing what they're good at to the table. Like no one's really walking in on something completely blind because there's no time to come into something and be like, oh, what are we doing today? So you have to come in, as prepared as possible, and as in the flow of what's happening as possible, or else it wouldn't really be able to get done, I don't think.
It's also, it's the other unique thing, it's a really small team. There's a handful of us. We're all in the same office. We might prep on Thursday, shoot on Friday, and then what inevitably happens is Friday night, this small team, we're all exhausted and we're done shooting, and then we'll go crash on the couch behind Adam, who's cutting the footage that we just shot. And I always think this must be so annoying for Adam, because this is like, now he's working and we're done and we're like sitting back or having a beer and just like laughing or joking or telling stories about how hard that was, and he's just sitting there just trying to work. Like,
to me, it almost sounds like one of those 48, 24-hour film challenges. What you do every week.
I think that's a pretty good parallel.
So
yeah,
and then it's finished by when it really goes on there on Saturday. It's like that same week. It's basically like three days, 4 days.
Yeah, quick timeline is, let's say it's a shoot that's going late into Friday night. We've definitely had ones that the final footage wasn't wrapped until the sun was out on Saturday morning this season. So if it's a crazy one like that, I'll start on set and start kind of just working remotely just to, again, get ahead of the game, leave set, come back, get a couple hours of sleep, and then start up in the morning. And then we need a dress rehearsal cut ready to go to play in front of the live audience at around 8 o'clock. And then keep in mind, we're also doing a full telecine and a full overcut and a full mix on everything too, with outside color houses that we work with. And then that all has to be reconformed, and we're also doing, a fair amount of After Effects and sound design, and it should never look like it was a day though. It should always be like, oh, that was a really cool, thought out, slick piece. So hopefully that's what we can do now.
The hard deadlines are, it's gotta be done for the 8 p.m. Saturday dress rehearsal, and then it's gotta be finished, because the 8 p.m. version can even be, it's usually, you guys are usually done, but then maybe there'll be some notes, between the dress rehearsal and the live show, where Adam and Reese will be told, hey, that was great, but trim 20 seconds, or hey, that was great, but I feel like there was a better take. Go, it's you got an hour, go recut it, remix it, recolor correct, and the show starts at 11:30. The show always starts at 11:30, so you have to be, done by then.
And I think I read in your...
We've definitely... Sorry. We've definitely had a couple times where the changes between dress and air were pretty substantial structurally. And that's when, that's when things can get a little not hairy, because we haven't missed one yet, knock on wood, but that's when you're definitely very manic. We've had stuff where we're playing live to air 20 seconds ahead of the actual broadcast, where someone walked in and hit the space bar. If you're watching it on TV, it would freeze, and that that can be a little intense, but it's fun. It's like it becomes like a sport in that sense.
On the editing side, how do you organize your workflow also when it comes to storage and how you save and back up all the data? Because there's not much time of dealing with stuff, and that also goes into question what cameras you shoot on, because it obviously makes a big difference if you shoot on RAW or what I mean. It just takes time.
Yeah. Why don't Alex start from the camera stuff first?
Yeah, on the camera side, it definitely used to be. It's funny because this story has changed in the last year even. On the camera side, I mean, we tried shooting like with the original Red 1 a few years ago, and that was really a nightmare. And I figured, well, this will never happen again. We cannot deal with raw footage at this show with all of the processing time. And yet this season, we shot a few spots with the new Epic Dragon in RAW, in 6K, or I guess it was 5K we shot. And Adam is just pulling the files directly into Premiere and cutting them in Premiere. And it's like almost like I wasn't even thinking about it. We did one shoot this season with the new Sony F55, and I actually played it really conservative. I knew that the camera's capable of shooting RAW, but I felt like, but remember, and literally it's like, yeah, but remember the RAW thing, there's something in my brain that says don't risk it. And yet Adam could have easily just pulled those RAW files into Premiere and cut that natively. Yeah,
even though with a F55 you can't influence the amount of compression in the RAW, right?
Right, yeah.
What you can do on the Red.
Yeah. No, so our workflow is, I mean, it's pretty camera agnostic. It's just whatever we think is the right camera for the job. If we think it's an Alexa job, we'll use an Alexa. If we think it's an Epic job, we'll use an Epic. If we think it's a C300 job, we'll use a C300 and so forth. And then, we're, on Adam's end, he's kind of deal with whatever we shoot.
Yeah, I mean, from a workflow perspective, we have, at the show, we have a big fiber SAN where everything is dumped. I mean, we have, post PAs and producers who we're either constantly shuttling drives as we're breaking camera, either giving it to me on set and I'm starting the edit there on like a MacBook Retina, just connected. We try to be Thunderbolt for everything now, just from as far as speed goes. And then if I'm starting on set, I'll basically take what I've got from production so far, and then the rest of the footage goes back to 30 Rock, put all of that into the central server, and then just relink that to our central server now, and then working again in native from the get-go until finish. Rarely rendering now, even if we're working in, a lot of times we'll either be working in, say like native 4K, or working in downscaled 4K is like an HD timeline, knowing that that's going to be our final delivery. We're usually delivering like a 422 HQ ProRes or 444, depending on how much time we have. Not that anyone can ever tell the difference, and I defy you if you think that isn't the case. And the nice thing with that is like we have then the flexibility as far as, again, because our time is so quick, to shoot, a close-up or to shoot a wide in, say, like just a dialogue scene. If we're shooting in 4K or 5K on something like a trailer, I now have, X percentage of blow up and push in to really like to reframe or to help stabilize or to do that. So just that being able to work native apart from being faster also gives us way more latitude and flexibility on the actual creative end of things too, which is great.
It does. The thing that does make a big difference, obviously, is like how fast can we get footage to Adam? We're on set in Brooklyn. How fast can we download our media cards? How many shuttles can we be sending back to him? And so in that case, again, it's like the way that camera technology has changed so that our workflow is faster. So everything we're doing, we've got these, G-Tech. They got their new G drive, is their G Drive Pro with super fast Thunderbolt speed, ingesting on set, getting it back to Adam so that he can ingest into the sand there. So we're using these G-Tech Thunderbolt drives as all of our shuttling, and then even from the set to our colorist, he'll color everything, and then and his timeline is actually almost one of the more sort of daring ones, because we've got a guy who's not in the same building. He's downtown at a color house coloring footage all afternoon, and that's the deadline that's almost the hairiest, because he's got to get footage physically on a drive from downtown or lower Manhattan all the way up to 30 Rock, Saturday evening, and so he's dumping it to another Thunderbolt drive and then having it messengered up to the show so that we can get the colored footage overcut into the thing before it's got to go on air.
Yeah, the funny thing is, if you talk to people from other industries where the more and more moves to the cloud, this is still far away from us, obviously. I mean, they like, I'm looking forward to a wireless G drive at some point, but it needs to be as fast as possible. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. But what would be a reason to shoot in 4K for you guys, other than being maybe forced to shoot in 4K if you want to use the full sensor on the Epic? But are there occasions where you actually don't have enough time for shooting? You just punch into those shots in post-production?
Yeah, Adam, you can definitely speak to that. I mean, that's the idea. I'll speak to the two different scenarios where you would ever shoot 4K, right? You either want to be able to deliver in 4K for this sort of future-proofing thing, which clearly, I mean, why would NBC or Comcast not want us to do that? But from our sort of everyday, we got to put on a show perspective, there's a lot of advantages on our timelines to shoot in 4K so that Adam and Reese have the latitude in post to change a shot compositionally if they have to. And Adam, you can speak to that because you've done that a lot of times.
Yeah, we worked on a piece this year, towards the end of the year. It was a trailer for a fake agency that arrests people if they don't like Beyonce. So that was a fun one. So it was very, very action-centric. And on something like that, you're plussing the rhythm using a hard cut into a close up on the face. But we didn't have the time to shoot in each. It's late at night, they're doing a really quick turnaround. We don't have the time to, okay, we're going to do a medium over the shoulder.
There he is.
Did I freeze?
You did eventually. I was hoping it was going to happen at some point.
I think you were just faking it, right? Yeah, but
yeah,
please start over with that sentence.
Yeah, I was just being very still. So basically, like, the nice thing is Alex knows, and I'm not using this as, I think some people would say, oh, we can just punch in on everything. That's not the case. Having a large latitude and a large frame is definitely not an excuse to never take time and really compose a shot. If you have the time to get a true close-up and reframe, then I'd say do that. It's always going to look better. But at the same time, in a pinch like we have, and using the tools that you have to know that you have, especially if you sharpen stuff a little bit, you can punch in like 70% basically, and no one will know the difference. It just gives you basically, each shot becomes 2 or 3 shots that you can then do something with.
And in the case of the spot that Adam's talking about, again, where I would absolutely, neither would I suggest using 4K resolution and then reframing in post as a great way to cover a scene. But we're in a situation where, Andrew Garfield, who's the host of the show, we've got him out, it's 2 a.m, he's exhausted, he's got to host a live show the next day, he's starting to feel sick, we're all freaking out that we're going to get the host sick and he's not going to be able to put the show on, and we still have to shoot a whole scene with him. And we could say, look, I've got 2 cameras, we'll do it in 1 shot. We'll shoot it a little bit looser. We know we can punch in and get the loose shot and the close-up in the same setup done. And we got him out in 5 minutes instead of turning it into 4 different setups.
So I guess the level of trust between you guys is high enough that you don't feel like you're losing control as a DP when Adam, has to punch into your shots and make creative decisions sometimes for you afterwards, right?
Well, No, absolutely not. I mean, ultimately, and this is something that I just learned along the way, and I think it's the reason why I've had any longevity at the show, and I think this is not just true of Saturday Night Live, but of anything that you're working on as a cinematographer, you have to understand that, you know, the end product comes first. That could mean that the performance comes first, or the joke comes first, or the deadline comes first, way before the beauty of your cinematography, way before what you intended as a cinematographer. I mean, my job is, you know, it's got to be funny. It's got to be done at 11:30, and if I can make it look good in that time frame, that's great. But that's not really the imperative. The imperative is that it's funny and that it's done. And you know, the other side of the coin is that I've been working with Adam for 5 years. I've been working with the director Reese for 10 years. I mean, you know, if there was ever a situation where I was asked to, hey, do you trust these guys? Of course I trust them. I've been working with them for a decade.
So I think that Beyonce sketch, is that the one you just blogged about recently?
Yes, yeah.
Could you just, I read through that blog the other day, and I just looked at it again before we started. There were some quite hairy deadlines in there. Could you just explain a little bit about the whole process and, you know, who you featured in that sketch and how it all went?
Sure. So this was the same sketch that was called The Bagency. If you live in America, you can watch it online. If you live in Austria, you have no chance of seeing it. Yeah, it was a spot that, again, it was the same schedule. I mean, we were going to shoot it on a Friday. It was going to broadcast on Saturday. We were told about halfway, that we were prepping on Thursday. We had way too many locations. They were all, most of them were supposed to take place at night, except that we had to shoot during the day because the cast members are only available to us for a few hours because they have to rehearse all the other spots that same day. And so it's not like a normal job where, hey, we've got the cast members for 12 hours, let's just schedule it the way that it makes sense for production. We're totally ruled by what makes sense for the cast members and their schedule, which is 12 other sketches they have to rehearse that same day. And then about halfway through the day, we found out that Kiefer Sutherland, who was in town promoting his new 24 series, was available to be in the spot as well. And so now we've got which was awesome, and I couldn't wait, but we had to now schedule around his schedule, because he's got a premiere that evening, so he has to work in the afternoon. So that scene was supposed to be a night scene, and now it has to be a day scene. Well, I don't know, where should that be? Okay, where could you shoot a day scene that's supposed to be? What about an underground parking lot? Okay, yeah, let's go find an underground parking lot somewhere. And you're just constantly just running around. And so, yeah, and then Friday we were, shooting on a stage, and then we did 3 location moves, and we were in a parking lot, and then we were doing night exteriors, and then there was car chases. It was all chase scenes, and then there was a choreographed dance number at the end. And yeah, it was all just very much like, and it was supposed to be this Tony Scott style, and I love Tony Scott, and it was all kind of, pivoting on this enemy of the state kind of spy thriller aesthetic, which I just love. And so it was just take what you love about one of these filmmakers that you love so much and just do it as fast as you can in one day. And so then Adam's got to, he gets the footage. We're done shooting at, I don't know, some terrible, 4 a.m. time schedule, and he's got to get the footage now turned around for the show. So it was one of the hairier ones, one of the longer shoots, but certainly one of the more fun ones the whole season.
Yeah.
So you have to schedule around the schedules of those cast members. That sounds a little bit like, on big Hollywood productions where everybody has to really, it's only about the big stars and their schedules, and they sometimes turn up for 3 hours and everything has to adjust to that time frame. Especially those films where you have like 12, 15 stars, like Expendables and these kind of things.
I would think so. I mean, I would say that the big difference is that in those cases, when I was a camera assistant, I worked with some really big stars in those kinds of situations. But at SNL, we certainly work with big stars, but the schedules are being driven by the necessary schedules to get all these other spots rehearsed. It's certainly not the ego of the cast member who says, I'll give you this many hours. We're really lucky. And I think this actually, there's just something about either being a cast member at Saturday Night Live or hosting Saturday Night Live. I think I think that either they do a remarkable job of not selecting people who are jerks, or if you're the type of person who would want to host the show, you're not a jerk, but everybody's super cool. I mean, you don't deal with egos on set. Everybody's just really, really very fun to be with. I mean, they're all comedians. Then the material you're working with is comedy, so even if it's long hours or even if it's really stressful, you're laughing the whole time, which really helps.
So there's, there are people changing through. You have like guest stars all the time, right? So how is it?
Yeah.
How do they already know what awaits them when they start working with you guys, or do you sometimes run into problems because they are not used to that fast turnaround?
Yeah, we absolutely will have some situations where we're shooting a spot so fast that we actually had a spot. We did a parody of a Spike Jonze, his movie, Her. And we had Jonah Hill was going to be in it, or he was in it. And we expected to have, we'll have like 6 hours with Jonah, and we ended up having like 2 hours. Same spot though, and we just had every single setup lit, and we just raced him through as fast as we could. And at the end of it, he was kind of like, that was amazing. He's like, that was seriously the craziest and most incredible thing that we just got through that so fast. Bravo. But he really didn't expect the speed at which we have to do these things.
Is that a regular thing, or that somebody turns up and it's suddenly it's 2 hours instead of 6?
Yeah, I mean you just go with the flow. I mean you could easily find out that there's so many moving parts. You could be, let's say that you have 2 or 3 film pieces shooting on a Friday and 12 sketches being rehearsed on a Friday, and it's the same cast member, the same guest host in every single thing. And so it's like, okay, well, he's going to be there shooting that film piece from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., and then he's going to go back to the stage, and then he's going to rehearse that spot. You have him from 2 to 4, then he has to go back to the stage, and then there's a meal break. And at any point in that, it's film production. Anything can go wrong. We had to change that. We went long. The guys that are scheduling at the show, I mean, I don't envy their job, but we could easily find out that, hey, we're not going to get him. He was held over in rehearsals. Oftentimes you find out we think we're going to get we think we're going to shoot in the evening, and then we find out you're not going to get at him at all until after midnight. And then once it's after midnight, it's like, so he wants to go to bed. So can you get him done like in 45 minutes? I'm like we thought we had 6 hours.
So here's a question for both of you. I mean, I think I don't have a lot of experience shooting comedy, but the little experience I have is sometimes you shoot something that you think, or the director thinks, is very funny on set. And then you edit it and it ends up not being funny at all. Does that happen as well, or how do you work around that? I mean, it's so much dependent on pacing.
Ever.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Funny in, funny out, 100% of the time. No, I don't know. I mean, I think one of the things that I never consider myself anything other than very lucky about, apart from the fact that everyone I work with is great and we're friends and it's a good time, even if it's very stressful, is, people, they'll ask sometimes, well, why was that piece really funny? And a lot of times I say, because it had Bill Hader and Fred Armisen in it, and they're 2 of the funniest actors alive. Like, you can't, like, that's not something that you're gonna be, that if it doesn't come out right, that's because I screwed up, not because it wasn't right. When you're dealing with, just solid talent, you almost sometimes want to get out of their way and never cut around or never cut down what's actually good about what it is. So I'm saying that, like, it's always funny coming in and always funny coming out, but the level of the people that we're lucky enough to work with and shoot and edit, they're so good and they're so funny. It's hard sometimes to have it not work.
You ever have that experience where you're on set and you're lighting a stand-in and you don't know what's going on? It just doesn't, this lighting setup should look good, but it just looks horrible. And then the stand-in leaves, and then the movie star steps in, and you're like, oh my God, this looks amazing, I'm a genius. There's just something magical. That's why they're the star. They've got this charisma you can't bottle it, that you can't even you look at, and in the case of these comedians, they're just so legitimately funny that me reading the same line that they're reading is like not funny at all. But it's actually a really good question. I mean, Adam, I know from my end, you know, people ask me all the time, how do you shoot comedy? Like, is it really like wide lenses? You know, and I'm like, no, this isn't like, you know, vaudeville. I mean, I think about trying to make it look as straight as possible. But from your end, I mean, do you ever encounter that where, well, this would be funnier if I cut it this way?
I mean, to an extent, like my favorite thing to do, or the thing that gives me the most pleasure, you know, comedically, and for especially at SNL, is when through an edit or through basically you're creating something that wasn't in the script initially, and that gets a laugh or that plays well. So like I'm always trying to approach a piece as, okay, here's what's on the script, but how can I add something to it or bring something to it more that takes the original intent of what the writers were trying to do, but then just like elevates it a little bit, or just, you know, just brings another step of something to it, because all that's going to do is just make everyone look better. So that's always kind of my, like, where I'm starting from when I'm like working on a piece at SNL.
Yeah, I actually think you and Reese always you'll add, because I'll see the spot like when it's finished, and my memory is, well, what we shot or what was on the script, and then I'll see the final spot and realize what Adam and our director Reese added. And you guys do a lot of great, funny additions just through sound design that was not in the script ever, you know, and maybe was just occurring to you in the moment, but a lot of jokes are coming in these subtle ways that almost, as an audience member, you might not even be able to put your finger on, what was that? Why did I just laugh? But it's some really clever, subtle thing.
How much?
Sorry.
How much improvisation is there on set? I mean, I just know from these, you know, tapings of sitcoms, like here at Paramount, I've been to a few. It's very interesting to see how much they change jokes on the fly if they don't work with the audience who's there. They just would take a break for 5 minutes, the writers get together and they just rewrite the whole thing. Or even sometimes the actor just has an idea and they just redo it and until it works. Is that something you would do on the scripted things, like, you know, the little film pieces you shoot as well?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never actually been to a sitcom taping. I didn't realize that they do that also. But certainly, you know, in our shoots, our writers are on set with us. And because they write things, you know, they have to write these spots so quickly that they'll write it on a Tuesday, it'll get selected on Wednesday, they'll rewrite it on Thursday. They might rewrite it again and again before we start shooting on Friday, then they're on set on Friday and watching, and as the jokes are landing or not landing, they're rewriting, not physically typing, but just in the moment, they might throw out alt lines. And so you're just rolling and they're just trying out different lines. And that it's funny because that's, you know, again, that's a testament to how funny the cast members, oftentimes what happens, I'm sort of jumping off the course here for a second, but a lot of times when someone auditions to be a cast member at the show, they might not get selected to be a cast member, but they're so funny they'll get selected to be a writer, you know? And so now you've got writers that are legitimately funny stand-up comedians even, and that way there's a lot of them they're a writer at the show and they do stand-up sets all the time. And so they're just as brilliant. I mean, they're in the moment, just on the fly, coming up with the funniest lines you can imagine that I would have never come up with in a million years. But, and so that's, I suppose that's as improv-y as it gets. I mean, the shows are, it's definitely it's a scripted show, and I don't, there are improvisational moments, but they're tight scripts, you know, they're funny scripts. And, you know, but when we're on the set, you know, it's certainly, we'll try out alternative lines, because you just, you know, even if the joke's not landing, you might, and this is another good question for you, Adam, because in our case, I feel like we'll shoot like multiple punchlines for, you know, not really knowing which is going to be the funniest. So it's not necessarily like, ooh, that was a dud, we better stop and figure this out. They'll just go, we don't know which one's going to be the funniest, so we'll do these 5 things. But then on your end, how does that work?
I mean, it's all contextual. It's funny that you said, you know, you're asking about improv. I feel like when we're actually putting the piece together, it's not improv in the sense that we're coming up with new stuff, but it's improv in the sense that we're definitely going kind of just from gut feel in the moments. So like if at the time, like when we're working, if someone said, you know, well, why did you just do that? Like the answer is, I don't know, because it felt right here. So as far as picking a joke, there isn't enough time. Like if you're working on a commercial and there's 5 different punchlines that they shoot, the agency is going to want to see, here's the cut with the first one, here's the cut with the second, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to want to see all of that, just because you have the time, you have the budget, and gotta please your creative director. Like in this case, we often just go with, I'll be breaking stuff down in the moment. That strikes me to be working well. If we play it back and everyone sees it and Reese looks at it and the producers and the writers look at it and everyone laughs, on we go. Just because there's not really much time to do like the real overthink. That being said, if it happens often, we'll put something in. One of the writers will be like, oh, I really remember though they did that fart joke. And you're like, which is usually what the conversation is. They'll be like, well, can we go with that? Like, sure. And then we try that, and then we'll have like a discussion. And the good thing is everyone's coming at it from the perspective of making the best, funniest thing possible. So no one takes anything personally. It's always just kind of going towards that direction.
Alex, how spontaneous do you have to be on set to react to directors and comedians' requests to change stuff, and how does newer, more portable, smaller equipment help you achieve that quicker? Let's say, for example, lights that are now maybe dependent on batteries instead of AC. Just move around locations without having that generator truck.
That's a great question and a great point. And it certainly depends on the spot. I think that, and the truth is that a lot of what we do, we could be on a soundstage, shooting on sets, and to some degree we're moving very quickly, but sometimes it's not that different from any other TV show or movie. I mean, it's a big setup. We have a crew, we have a generator and all that. And then other times when we know, okay, well, regardless of our budget, we've got to hit 8 locations today, so we can't cable out from a generator, and we can't set up this big light. So we are. So on a shoot by shoot basis, we're selecting our gear to be as lightweight or as not lightweight as we need. I mean, the spot we were just talking about, we shot it with the Dragon, the Epic Dragon. Even though I honestly felt like, okay, for this kind of spot, it's got a real filmic, kind of real analog-like quality to it. It's trying to be like a Tony Scott movie. I feel like the Alexa is probably the right choice for this, but the Epic Dragon is so much lighter and so much smaller, and we can move so much faster. And I know I'm running around handheld a lot, and for all these reasons, and we'll be shooting a lot of off speeds, and it will be nice to have the extra resolution if we have to punch in. So we'll select that camera. And having these super lightweight and small options are kind of necessary for what we're doing.
Cool. So before we move to a few audience questions, just one last question. Now you are on the summer hiatus, so you have time to shoot a movie, right? So what's both of your plans for the summer?
What are you doing, Adam?
A couple things. So this last hiatus, the last summer, Reese, the director we work with, shot a comedy for Paramount that has a bunch of SNL folks that Lauren Michaels is producing. And so we worked on that all last summer and then doubled up with that during the year. So this summer, the beginning part of it is going to be kind of the finish on that. That's actually what I'm at 30 Rock working on today. And then in late July, I'm going to be going on a workshop tour around the country. If you're interested in hearing more about these excitingly nerdy things and talking about stuff like workflow and codecs and staying up really late and getting delirious but having fun doing it, come on out. It's going to be a good time. A lot of cities, similar to what Mr. Buono did last summer for cinematography, but more focused on the post-production and the editorial side of things.
Cool. So you are, how many cities are you touring?
It's going to be 32 cities.
You're crazy. You are crazy.
That many.
Even I only did 31 cities, Adam.
Boo!
And you, Alex?
I'm making a documentary. So I've actually been working on this for a while, as you know from documentaries take forever. And so I started shooting in January, and I've sort of been off and on shooting. I'm shooting in New Orleans. And so I'm starting the cut, so we're editing now.
What is it about?
It's about, it's kind of set in the immigration reform, deportation kind of world. It's a really wild story about a sort of a vigilante story set in that world. Yeah, so we're editing and shooting and editing. And
that's going to be on TV?
Hopefully it's going to movies. I mean, it's a feature-length thing, and we'd like to take it to a festival like Sundance or Toronto or something.
Cool. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
It's going to be really cool. It's a great story.
Are you editing in this, Adam?
No, I'm going to be...
But it's still going to be good.
Yes. It's probably going to be better because of that.
Wrong.
Cool. So let's move on to some audience questions. Is there anybody here who has a question for our guests?
Thank you to the moderator. You probably answered this question pretty much already, but I guess my question is, I just did a short sketch, a little comedy thing. It was really simple lighting, really fast, like you were talking about, and we're kind of doing some editing right now, and it's kind of, what would be some suggestions to a small independent comedy sketch that you could say by lighting or through post that could maybe kind of boost it a little bit?
That's a good question. So you're saying that if you're going out and doing more sort of video comedy sketch type stuff, what kind of tools would be?
Yeah, what would be some nice tools? What would be some good advice? Workflow, a good light kit to have, just because of its portability.
Sure. Sure.
Some tricks and tips.
Okay, so off the top of my head, I would say camera-wise, I think the C100, the Canon C100, would be a great choice. Small, super light, looks great. All the advantages of some larger cameras, but very small, and you can take it into situations where it almost looks like a still camera. So maybe if you're doing some improv-y stuff and you don't want to draw a lot of attention, it's a great camera for that. Lighting-wise, I have been using these lights. They're called Area 48. It's an LED. It's massively powerful, very soft, takes a battery, very mobile. I really like that light a lot. Adam, do you have any? I'd say storage-wise, I think just getting into the, for our kinds of work where we're moving really fast and we want to be really portable as well, just getting into the sort of portable Thunderbolt world. G-Tech's now got like a bunch of different Thunderbolt options, but they're really, really small. Yeah, Adam, do you have any advice?
I would say, I think one of the things that, especially when people are starting out and making their own things, they focus on some things very intently, or very intensely, and that does a little disservice to the rest of the stuff, where if they spread it out more, it would be better. So in the sense that a lot of times people are like, we need to get the best camera and the best lens, and that's going to be great. Or, or they put a lot of their time and their money in that. And Alex has said this before. What I would say is spend half of what you were planning on doing on a camera and put the rest of that money into hiring a good prop person or a good scenic, because you can have, an $80,000 camera. If you're shooting in a white apartment, visually it's not going to be interesting, right? And also pay a huge amount of attention to sound and make sure you get someone who can record well, and also design something interesting. You can have like a really funny, well-written kind of dialogue scene that can still play dry if you're not bringing just like another element to it, whether or not it's just like ambient sounds or just punctuating stuff. Like anything that you can continually add more to is just going to make it feel more professional and just make it feel usually funnier. To me, like the more professional something feels, you're not paying attention to the things that feel amateur about it. You're focusing more on the actual story and the actual comedy of it.
It's actually interesting that so Adam is doing this workshop this summer, right? It's called the Cutting Edge Post-Production Tour. And
thank you, Alex.
and actually, the thing that I'm personally the most looking forward to seeing is Adam talking about sound design, not about tricks to cutting comedy, but how sound design is this thing that is just the last thing you think about, and yet it adds that polish, that finish, that and in a lot of cases jokes. I mean, it makes things funnier that I think people just don't get how important that is, or they don't really even know what to do. That's so kind of beyond your camera, and did you light it well? And 'cause you could light it great and perfect cuts, but what's wrong? It's not quite finished. It's this extra layer of like sound design that Anyway, I'm looking forward to that part of your workshop.
From a quick once over on sound, people always talk about it's 50-50. You need beautiful picture and good sound. Taking nothing away from talented cinematographers like Alex, I think it's weighted far heavier towards sound, personally. Think of it in the sense that you could shoot something on an iPhone or something like, the Blair Witch Project. The reason those work is because they have like a full professional sound bed behind them. Versus if you're shooting something on 70 millimeter and projecting it in IMAX, and then someone comes out and the second they start talking, it sounds echoey and tinny, you are immediately taken out of it. You can't watch it for 2 seconds. So if you're grounded in like a solid, like really round, good base of sound, it's gonna let people be that much more into whatever you're doing.
I think I couldn't agree more. I think people also, when we talk about documentaries, it's the same thing. People would accept inferior images, but you wouldn't accept if you can't understand somebody, if somebody's talking, or if there's wind noise, or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally. It can be out of focus, it can be underexposed, it can be grainy, but if it sounds great, you're totally with it.
Yeah. Cool. So we all agree on this. More questions?
I'm curious about what it's like when you're shooting in LA versus in New York when it comes to the permit process and just the size of the crews. If you have to, if you're always doing things with permits, and if not, what that's like with so much writing on your deadlines.
That's a really great question. The permit process for us is always pretty challenging. We definitely use permits at Saturday Night Live, and it's really hard to. We have obviously a very long-term, long-standing relationship with the city of New York, being a show like Saturday Night Live, and yet we've done things in the past that makes the permit office sort of upset with us. And we're on probation with the permit office for most of the year, most of the season. So we live by the same rules everybody else lives by. If we don't get our request in by noon on Thursday, we do not get a permit on Friday morning. And it's very rare that we'll try to go shoot something without a permit. Once in a while we've had to do it, and it's just so sketchy. We had to do we were shooting with Justin Timberlake, and we needed this one night shot, and we didn't realize we needed it, and we went out and tried to shoot it guerrilla style, and we did it successfully. It was like, we have Justin Timberlake in like one of the most popular areas of New York at night on like a Friday night. We did another spot where we had Andy Samberg and Jason Sudeikis in Times Square with no permit, but it was we planned it like it was like a caper. I was standing there, I had a C300, but it was a really small camera, and I had it down low, and they pulled up in a van, and they just jumped out. We needed one shot with them. We jumped out, we got the shot. I had a PA was shooting it on an iPhone the whole time.
Spinning around.
Yeah, and I think they were physically out of the van for 45 seconds. And they got back in the van, but they were wearing like these super tight shorts and these like tops, and it was like really hard to pull off, because we thought there's gonna be 10,000 maniacs swamping Andy Samberg and Jason Sudeikis any second now. And they were gone before anybody, and then everyone sort of looked around like, is that, what? And they were gone. But it was, we have to get permits and live by the rules that everybody else has to live by. And it's definitely challenging. And certainly we have not gotten better locations because we didn't get our permit in.
Thanks so much, guys. Unfortunately, we have to wrap it up here. I think we could talk for hours and hours. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for coming. Yeah, well, audience, stick around for a bit because we will do the drawing for the G-Dock EV. One of you will walk away with that. Thanks for watching to our audience at home. Thanks to our sponsors, G Technology, Vitek Videocom, Rode Microphones, Post Magazine, and Owls Media. And see you on one of our next shows. Thanks.